There are many people in America today who believe that there's no law that requires them to pay an income tax or file a 1040. I've researched this very thoroughly because I kept hearing for years there's no law that you have to pay, and I sort of poo-pooed it.
Yeah, I did too.
And they make you think anybody that says that's a wacko and a kook, But there is no law. Let me just tell you straight out. There is no law that requires you to file a 1040.
Miss Jackson, remember that information I told you on the phone? It's in the USA Today. Pull it up on the internet. Okay, so I got the USA Today. It was July 7th, 2000. And it says, "Dear we the people, most citizens are not required to file an income tax return. The 16th Amendment to the Constitution is a fraud, and if you file, you waive your Fifth Amendment rights." I said, okay, that's some of the stuff she was saying. Now, this is a lot of reading. But I kept reading because I was very interested, being a CPA and into fraud and all that. I wanted to see what was going on. So here in the third column, it says, "No one has been able to collect the $50,000 reward offered by Bill Conklin to anyone that can identify the section of the Internal Revenue Code that makes a typical worker liable for the income tax." I'm serious about winning the $50,000. Okay, so it's at my desk. Basically, I just shoved everything off my desk and got the codes out, the regulations out, the tax guide. I got on the internet to look at the Cornell University site, all these different things, and I started researching. And 2 weeks later, I said to myself, oh my goodness, we have a problem here. It doesn't look like I'm going to win this money. And I was sitting there at my desk thinking, this thing is a fraud.
I found very compelling in your film is that you're talking with former IRS agents and investigators who were put to the task of finding out on behalf of inquiries as to whether or not this was a legal practice,
right,
only to find out that it wasn't legal. And in fact, some of these people who were formerly with the IRS have not paid their taxes since they found out about this.
Right.
Now,
there are many IRS agents, former agents, who have left the IRS because they did the research, and they were in there before I was.
Right.
And they deserve to be honored for the work they've done, because it's a giant, in my opinion, it's a giant scam. And
it takes a lot of courage to do that, though, because what are we still up against?
Well, the thing is that we're up against the police state, because what they'll do is, even though there's no law, they threaten people with harm.
Right.
You see, but I interviewed the IRS commissioner, the ex-IRS commissioner, who wrote the tax code. He was general counsel to the IRS. He was the commissioner to the IRS, and he wrote the tax code. Okay, his name is Sheldon Cohen, and I interviewed him for the movie. And in the movie, he says, Supreme Court decisions are inapplicable to the IRS. So I called Sheldon Cohen, because he used to be the IRS commissioner. He wrote the tax code, and he was also general counsel to the IRS. He is a true expert, and I couldn't find a better person to answer my questions. He graciously agreed to my interview. The reason I'm doing this documentary is because there are many people in America today who believe that there's no law that requires them to pay an income tax or file a 1040. And there are many people going to jail for it, fighting over it.
The Internal Revenue Code is authorized by the 16th Amendment.
I think it should be clarified. I think government should be transparent to the people. Why doesn't the IRS commissioner sit down with them and just explain it in clear English? Why?
I don't think they really care. I think they're just playing word games.
You don't think they're sincere people?
No, I don't think they're sincere.
Isn't it true that the word income is not defined anywhere in the Internal Revenue Code?
The law says that the government has a right to tax income from any source derived.
So, but the word income is not defined in the code. It just says income without a definition
That's right.
of what income is.
That's right.
Correct?
Yeah.
But there are many different kinds of taxes. Well, how can an American citizen know what income is if the code doesn't define it? If they're paying an income
Because
tax...
the courts have all defined it.
Do you remember what constitutional attorney Edwin Vieira said?
The definition of income in the Constitution was given in the Eisner versus Macomber case, and it turns on gains or profits that are made from some activity.
So the Supreme Court has ruled income is not wages, it's not labor, it's gain from corporate activity. I believe that a man's labor is his private property.
That's your view, but it's not the law.
The Supreme Court's even said your labor is your private property. When I go to work for somebody, it's a trade. It's an even exchange. I do some work, you give me some money.
Title 26 requires you to file a return.
But doesn't Title 26 have to be in compliance with the Supreme Court decisions?
You're going to take a 1920 case and superimpose it on the whole Internal Revenue Code that was written after it? No, that's not.
I can't believe what I just heard. Rewind.
You're going to take a 1920 case and superimpose it on the whole Internal Revenue Code that was written after it? No, that's not.
Remember he said earlier the Internal Revenue Code was authorized by the 16th Amendment?
The Internal Revenue Code is authorized by the 16th Amendment.
Remember, the Supreme Court said the 16th Amendment did not give the government any new taxing power. These decisions have never been overturned. Let's listen further. Can the lower courts overrule the Supreme Court?
No.
How are they putting people in jail today for not paying a tax on their labor when the Supreme Court said they don't have to? Doesn't the IRS code have to be in compliance with the Supreme Court? That's my big
Aaron,
question.
this is a waste of time.
Well, let me
Because whatever I say, you're not going to believe.
He's right. I don't believe him. And neither should you. He wants us to believe we should obey the IRS code, which is being enforced in violation of the many Supreme Court decisions. If the Supreme Court made a decision...
Thank you, Aaron. I think we're finished.
I'm sorry, Mr. Cohen, you're doing that.
Well, I'm sorry that you constantly re-argue the point. You're liable because the law says that you're liable,
But
and the
doesn't-
courts say the law says you're liable,
Doesn't-
and that's why you're liable. You're making silly arguments here.
Why is the Supreme Court decision a silly argument?
Well, because it's inapplicable.
The birth certificate is used, so the corporation or the plantation claims the birth of the child. Like you get a certificate and it'll say, born in the state of New Jersey. Say, born in Camden, in the state of New Jersey. So that means the Camden Municipal Corporation gave you birth, being subject to the New Jersey State Corporation established in 1844, and that's your mother. And that's a certificate where the mother signs the child over to the hospital, who is in cahoots with the state under the Christian black codes, and they regulate, and they're like spies, they tell everything, and they operate together. Now you look back into the Christian black codes of 1724 and you see the absolute relationship between the hospital and the state. All right? So the offspring of the womb automatically belongs to the state, and so that you don't feel uncomfortable, instead of saying slave, they'll call it W-A-R-D, ward of the state. So the child being state property, that instrument or that birth certificate, being that's their property under commercial auspices, is transferred into a stock. And so at birth, that child, I think as of now, what's about 20 years ago was about 16,000. So about now it's probably $30,000 or representative 35,000 units that when the child is born and that certificate is put on them, that burden is already put on that child. So what they do, they borrow against it, project it on the tax that they expect to get from that thing during its life cycle. All right? So
last I was reading, it was $630,000.
$630,000 now? Yeah, that's because it accelerated exponentially.
And they have on the birth certificate mother or other informant.
Yes, yeah.
They will form it.
Yes, and they're agents.